Hi, I'm Dr. Kim Logan-Nowlin.
And I'm Arthur Nolan.
And welcome to Making It Work. You know, Arthur, we did part 1 to military and service, but we wanted to do part 2 because it was so much information.
It was a lot of information, and it was really something that was exciting to me.
Well, definitely. Well, I just want to recap for those who are just joining us for the first time today. You served in the Air Force, and you also served in Vietnam. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And our special guests, we want to welcome them, Pastor Philip Willis and also Mr. Roscoe Gray. Tell us a little bit where you served and the impact of that service.
I served as a chaplain in the Army, and I'm still serving currently now. I did 2 tours in Iraq.
2 tours. All right. Mr. Gray.
I served as a fire team leader in Vietnam. I was a paratrooper and served 11 months in Vietnam.
11 months. All right. Well, let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about your service, you being injured there, Mr. Gray, and what you went through. What was it like coming back home after service?
He was isolated. Getting out of the service at the airport, you are all alone. No one said, welcome home. No one said, good job. You're just all alone. Wow. Just like walking in a maze. What did I do to be isolated like this?
That's absolutely true. I felt the same feeling. It was terrible, you know. I can remember coming into Los Angeles, and it was like an experience that I never forget because no one paid attention to me at all. Nobody asked me any questions. You know, as a matter of fact, it was just like, hurry, get on your next stop and go.
Wow.
But you had guys with one arm, one leg, and wheelchairs. No one said, welcome home. No one said, I've been praying for you. It was nothing like that.
Yeah. I think in contrast, we had a big ceremony. I mean, we got off the plane. There were people there to greet us, shaking our hands, General, Chief of Staff. And then after that, we bused to our home station, and there were celebrating fans there waiting on us, family members. I remember I did a piece on Fox News. They were there talking about it. But I will say this, probably the most memorable experience that I had, and I think should have been deserved for our veterans of Vietnam. I went through the airport. I was returning back to Iraq through Atlanta. And the guy who was guiding us, he wasn't a military person, he worked for the airport. He guided all the soldiers back that were coming home off of leave and going back to Iraq. And he said in the airport, everybody stand up. These soldiers are fighting for your freedom, and let's give them a standing ovation.
That must have been something.
I was moved emotionally by it. I just couldn't help but think about, you know, some of the Vietnam guys that never got that. But it was a tremendous feeling, you know. Felt proud.
Let's talk about PTSD. I think we mentioned it a little on our last program.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Very good.
Let's talk about it, what it is, and how you define it within yourselves. And as counselors, we see a lot of that in our clinic in Detroit. So let's talk about post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, when the soldiers from the Vietnam era came home, they were sent home. But yet they was troubled emotionally, spiritually, physically. And as time went past, what's wrong with you? Why you act like that? I don't know. Are you crazy? That's what was happening. But what was happening, they was having all these problems. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. You daydream a lot.
Flashback.
Especially when you're alone.
When you're alone.
When you have nightmares. And people say, you're just crazy, that's all. And no one would understand the side effect of what was going on. I had a friend of mine.
Wow.
Served also 173rd. Came home, killed himself.
What?
Came home and killed himself.
We had a lot of that was happening in the Air Force when they were out on stations. They were next thing you know, they would call you and let you know that somebody just committed suicide. And it was really strange to me, especially the first time I heard it. I couldn't understand, you know, what would make them go to that point. But I think it was a lot of things that maybe the military person was seeing that was causing them to act that way. And I guess when you were explaining about going back and seeing the death that was around you, you know, that was really traumatic.
I tell soldiers the reintegration process can be different depending on the people. You know, there are some soldiers that are like Teflon. They'll go and they'll see all the experiences, see the elements of war and come home and act as if nothing ever happened. But then you have people that are really in touch with their feelings and emotions and just the whole intensity of it. I remember I was going on a mission, and I'd gone on several missions with this one soldier, and he said, "Chaplain, I really need to talk to you." So finally, in the midst of one of the missions, I said, "Let's talk." And we sat down and we talked, and I said, "We need to get you to one of our psychologists." I took him into the psychologist because he was saying, "Chaplain, I'm having nightmares. You know, this is my 4th tour. We lost 11 guys on the last tour, and I'm having a difficult time." Sometimes commanders think the soldiers are just trying to get off the mission, but I said, "I'm going to get you some help." I took him in, and the psychologist came back out and said, "Chaplain, this soldier has severe PTSD. We need to get him some support." I think the reintegration process is difficult because it's a detour from reality. Most people know that when there's harm ahead of you, you evade it. But in a war zone, you go right into it, and it's part of your life. And then you begin to anticipate it, and your adrenaline high is so high that you kind of need it to keep going from day to day. And then when you come home, everything stops all of a sudden. Literally one day you're in a war zone, and then 3 or 4 days after you get home, you're back on the streets. I remember, even as a chaplain, I didn't carry any weapons, but I was in those same vehicles that those guys were in, looking out for insurgents, wondering if the IED was going to blow up the next minute. And if you've had those experiences, it intensifies it. So I came home to Detroit after my first tour. I'm driving down 696. I'm looking down the road in my Honda Civic for roadside bombs.
Wow.
Oh, I can believe that. You know, I can definitely believe that. And I have to say this, I remember when you came home the first time.
Oh, yes.
And I remember some of the difficulties that you were experiencing. And I talked to you for a moment. And in the process of talking to you, I can sense that it was a different you. It was more intense.
Right.
And you were really thinking about the experience that you had just come out of.
Right. Well, see, this is what happens for me. You have soldiers that live 24 years of their life on this side, 30 years of their life, 18 years of their life in normal reality. And I tell them it's a departure from reality because when you go to war, it's like two intersecting lines. Regular life continues to go forward. You go into like a time warp, and when you come back, you expect to return to the same love, to the same life, but everything has moved forward. Your wife, your spouse, whoever else has moved forward. Friends have other degrees. They continue to move forward. You come back, and you're missed out on a whole lot. So you have to rediscover the reality that you left. What did I used to do before I went over there? I used to go out and eat. I used to go to this place. So I was at Borders one time just trying to get situational awareness, get my feet back on the ground. And I had a friend call me. He was in Kuwait. He never saw combat. He was working at a hospital. I was in the area of Mosul where we were getting bombed and blown up. Mortars were coming in every day. So the impact was quite different for me
I can imagine.
than it was for him. I got a call from him as I was going through my recovery phase, as I call detoxification, day after day. He calls me, he says, "Phil, I'm finding myself more aggressive." And I was feeling the same thing, but I was saying, why is this guy finding himself more aggressive when all he did was work at the hospital? But he was seeing the broken bodies that was coming in. You know?
That's
the scars.
That's powerful.
You see, and we tend to take it so lightly from the other side when we're sitting down watching it on television. We don't really understand the impact, but those family members understand the impact. What was the reaction when your mother saw you, Brother Gray? What happened, Mr. Gray, when he saw you?
Scarred up.
Well, when I first came home, First, I want to see my girlfriend.
You see your girlfriend.
I want to see my
Well,
girlfriend.
that's
Mama.
understandable.
Oh, I want to see my
You
girlfriend.
want to see your girlfriend?
Oh, no, I couldn't wait. The plane from Washington, D.C. at Walter Reed Hospital to Detroit, it was so slow.
The plane was slow.
Detroit, I've never been on the plane that's so slow.
Okay,
I want to get out in a hurry.
All right.
And I go over to her house. Now, this is my high school sweetheart.
Wow.
Guess what?
What?
She's 7 months pregnant.
Oh.
Seeing her like that was worse than being shot in Vietnam.
Wow.
Because before I was shot, the last letter I received from her was, nothing would happen to you because you're so smart.
Wow.
I went home to my mother, and she just cried, just to see her baby all scarred up, guts in a bag. I mean, you could just see my stomach, because I was talking to the doctors. I got to go home. I want to go home. So what he did, he colored my stomach. And
What do you mean they colored your stomach?
what happened? He put some black tar or something on it, because I was open all here. Then I had my colostomy out.
Yes.
And my mother wanted to see my stomach, and she fainted.
She fainted.
I had a colostomy out, my stomach was messed up, I was walking with a cane, my finger was gone, I was set afire, and she just fell out. And just cried, just cried.
Well, on top of that, we're talking about a society that didn't accept you back.
Right.
You know, and then a girlfriend that was 7 months pregnant.
7 months pregnant.
So how did you keep it together?
Well, I don't even know. I don't even know. I'll tell you what happened. I was supposed to be home for 30 days. I went home in a week. I went back to Walker Reed in 1 week's time. Because I went back where my friends were.
Right.
Where you connected.
Right where I connected, went back there. You home? You back so soon? Yeah. In the hospital, guys was all banged up from Vietnam, lost limbs, lost this or that, and their wives or girlfriends would come and look at them and walk right out the door and go back home.
And just leave them.
Just leave them.
Well, I'd like to say something about that, because, you know, the wives and girlfriends can't relate. I think it takes a mature person to really try to relate. But what usually ends up happening is that the soldiers want to be normal, and they think they're normal, and they think they return back to normal. But the spouses or significant others see that they're different. And, you know, they just don't have the connectivity with what they're going through, and they can't deal with it a lot of times.
So you're almost saying then that a process or some type of therapy may be needed for the family members just to accept the person back,
Well,
especially if he's a wounded veteran.
The families need to know, because they think they're getting the same person back, and they're not. They can't identify. In fact, you can't even, soldiers can't really even talk and go into detail, because as soon as 3 or 4 seconds while you're telling them about your experience, their eyes glaze over, and you know they don't get it, and you don't want to talk about it anymore.
Did either one of you receive counseling after your tour?
No.
No. No counseling was provided?
No.
I definitely would believe that you probably didn't receive one after Vietnam. You probably didn't.
You go out to the hospital out in Allen Park when I was out there, you had all these Vietnam vets out there. All kinds of problems. We was given Darvons. You know what Darvons are? Pain pills.
Pain pills.
You didn't work on the system that was happening to them. They was messed up here. But you gave you Darvon. It wasn't until I went to a private doctor, he said, wow, you have ulcers all inside your stomach. Had bleeding ulcers.
Bleeding ulcers.
Bleeding ulcers. And all that the VA was giving me and other guys was Darvons. They had to take that, had to stop giving those guys the Darvon, make them crazy.
I remember that.
You got addicted to it. The Darvons.
They're taking drugs now. Soldiers are heavily medicated, and they're not able to really be lucid in their thinking. They just try to numb away the pain. But I did go to counseling.
You did?
Here's the reason why. People don't think that chaplains actually engage in the battle. They think they're sitting back waiting for soldiers to come with them. I'm not cut that way just to sit at an oak desk and wait for soldiers to come or whatever. I engaged in the battle. I went out on the missions. I was there with the soldiers when trucks got blown up and shot at and all that stuff. I was there. Not to mention that, if I had 1,900 soldiers under my purview in a battalion, All those guys came to one chaplain. I was their guy.
Really?
So I had problems. I was getting woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Chaplain, we just had a mission that was hit. 2 soldiers are dead. All of a sudden, I got to get ready for a memorial ceremony, and I know those guys and stuff like that. Or I get waken up in the middle of the night, and a guy tells me, I knew something bad was going to happen. I was just about to get on the radio and tell him, and then we got hit, and those guys are dead. You know, I'm dealing with all of this. So all of this bad stuff that happened, where do I go? I had social workers there coming to me for counseling. Now, so I go home with all of this stuff. Where do I put it?
My goodness.
And it wasn't until my dad was diagnosed with cancer,
With cancer.
and then my girlfriend broke up with me, that I started to kind of unravel. Never missed a day of work, never missed a sermon, but inside I was broken emotionally. So what they have now is they have Military One Source where you can call soldiers.
Yeah, I heard
in 24 hours you can call them. And I cried and I talked to him on the phone, and the lady said, hey, you're gonna be okay. We understand what you're going through. We're gonna get you set up for somebody to talk to. And they took care of me. I needed that because I had nowhere to download all of that stuff.
That was
For that
excellent.
13 months, that first
13
tour.
months.
So that was effective for you.
It was.
Okay.
It helped.
Okay.
With a real critical period in my life. It really helped. Big time.
Now, and when we had that, when I came from Vietnam, a lot of guys were a lot better off. Seeing bodies burnt with the napalm, seeing your friends, that you got to hold them till he die. You have to put them in a body bag and zip them up. And that stays right with you.
You know, the mind is never supposed to see that. You know, I saw brain matter rolling down the side of a vehicle after it got, because you know, this chaplain, they called a chaplain there for this stuff. You're not supposed to see that.
Right.
Not in that environment. You know, you don't anticipate that that's what you're going to see. That's what war is, and when you wake up to that reality, it changes you forever.
So now we're at a point where post-traumatic stress has been recognized as something that is extremely debilitating, especially when we're talking about dealing with combat. So what do you see in the future as far as something that's going to be significant to really help veterans coming back?
Well, what they're doing now for the Vietnam vets with the DAV, the VFW, and other agencies, that these Vietnam vets all have the same symptoms, the same problems. Oh, something wrong with that. Aha, now they're getting help. A lot of these guys came home, went to work, they retired now they have all kinds of problems.
And VAW,
Sexual
Veterans of War.
problems, everything. Sexual problems, everything. So now their needs are being looked after. But look what happened, that's 40 years later.
40 years later.
40 years later. And a lot of the guys that came home got married, divorced, married, divorced. If they had the counseling, things would have been a lot better.
Different. Well, you know, I want to look at the future and look at the lives, because there have been some happy endings for many of our soldiers.
Oh, yes.
And tell us what you're doing now. And Mr. Gray, I want to know how you came into the Seventh-day Adventist message. How did you become a Christian?
I had a girlfriend that broke up with me.
Another, this is
Oh,
another girlfriend?
man, she broke my heart.
Okay, so this
I
is
mean,
another.
I was thinking about suicide and everything.
Wow.
I mean, all these women breaking up with me, all this bad luck with women. What's my problem? My grandmother called me.
Your grandmother.
She said, "Why don't you come out to California for a little while?"
Okay.
She was an Adventist,
Is that right?
and I took a leave from work, went out to San Jose, California, and come go to church with me. I don't go to church with you. I didn't come out here to go to church. I went out there to get a girlfriend. That's what I went out there for. Find another.
He's gonna find you someone
Find me
else.
somebody. You know.
Okay, because you did not want to be alone.
Right.
Okay.
You know, and I never went to church with her. I called my cousin. We'd go to Frisco and Oakland and party. Come home Friday nights. Make grandma mad. You know, come go to church with me. Oh, grandma, I can't go today. I go next week. My aunt also had been there. She said, come go to church with me. Okay. Just to get away from grandma, I went to her. I went to church with her.
Okay.
But that night before I went to church with her, she told me everything. Everything. Why God did this, why God did that, why. And when I went to church on that Sabbath, everybody in South Central Seventh-day Adventist Church knew who I was.
What?
They had been praying for you.
You are Sister Gray's grandson. I met Pastor Hart. He said, young man, we've been praying for you.
Wow.
When we heard you got shot, we fast for you.
Wow.
And I said, well, I started taking Bible studies. And I said, well, when I get back to Detroit, I joined the church. 2 years later, I joined the church. It took me 2 years.
It took you 2 years from when you came to California.
Right.
But you joined.
But I joined the church.
And that's where you
Snow
met.
was that deep.
And you joined.
I joined the church.
And then, because you were employed where?
Ford Motor Company.
Ford Motor Company until you retired. And then you met that girlfriend.
Well, a mutual friend of ours introduced me. And I said, wow, look at this young lady. And she walked down the center aisle of City Temple towards the back door. And I said, as she turned around, I got her. And she turned around and looked at me, and I started chasing her every second. But you know what? This is a friend of mine's mother told me that the Lord put people in your life just for a season.
For a season.
And all these girlfriends that broke up for me, they was only there for a season.
For a season.
And until my wife came along. And she was the one that the Lord had chosen.
Yeah, a long time ago.
And how long have you all been married?
36 years.
36
What
years.
a blessing.
3 children.
36 years.
And 2.5 grandchildren. You got another
I got
grandchild?
one in the oven now.
One in the oven.
And now you're working with veterans.
Oh yes, I
Trying
go
to
down
help
to the
them.
VA on Thursday.
Do
and
you?
talk to the veterans.
That's wonderful.
But
And
what
also
did-
with the DAV Post #1 on Puritan,
Right.
where we work with veterans as well.
All right. And DAV stands for
Disabled American Veterans.
veterans.
Now, one of the things that I've seen in the news recently is that a lot of the veterans that are coming home now from the wars are not only suffering from post-traumatic stress, but they're also homeless.
Yes.
I mean, which is astounding, because they're unable to find employment, unable to, a lot of them that may qualify for certain benefits haven't even applied, so they're on the streets, So how do you see that changing, or if you see that changing?
Well, I heard recently there's an initiative by the president to provide funds were available for individuals that wanted to put homes together for veterans that were without homes. There's a lot of programs available. The issue is getting the message out to those guys. I think more than it's ever been before, there's programs available. There's the counseling 24 hours. All they have to do is call or go online and they can get in touch with somebody. Same thing for homes. There's programs, but they just need to know. They don't have that knowledge.
You don't have the knowledge. Pastor Willis.
Yes.
Now, you have married, new baby, and you're pastoring.
Yes.
And you're still, like you said, active. You're
That's
still, is that the reserve that you're in,
Yes,
a part of?
I just transferred to the reserves.
To the reserve.
So you were in the National Guard.
I was in the National Guard and I transferred to the reserves.
To the reserve. Now, you are pastoring in Gary, Indiana.
That's right, and South Chicago.
And South
2
Chicago.
churches.
And you have a program called the Man College.
Man College, that's right.
Tell me about that.
Man College is a really aggressive program that we developed after looking at our community. 64% of all the families in Gary, Indiana, and South Chicago are from single parents, primarily female dominated.
64%.
64%. So that means that you have boys and girls out there with only one parent. And if they have a job, who's taking care of those kids? But I noticed in my church that we found some of the boys were aggressive. Some of them, having been raised by their mother, their grandmother, and their sister, had some characteristics that were unmanlike, long fingernails, not well groomed, aggressive behavior. And I said, we definitely need to do something. There was an incident that raised my awareness where we had a young man. I responded to somebody and he punched 2 holes in the wall of our church. And I said, we've got to do something aggressively to help wrap our arms around them and to embrace them and teach them. So we developed Man College, which goes back to the basics of education and align them with positive male role models that'll help them through some tough times in life and just some coaching and mentoring and teaching.
Let me ask you now, is Man College part of maybe your philosophy from your military experience?
I would have to say so, you know, because predominantly, majority of the guys that I work with were men, and I got a chance to see how they were and how they were impacted by it. I came back after I volunteered for my second tour, and that had something to do with reintegration, because I saw that I was better suited after 1 year of that horrible experience to go back again than stay here and deal with the realities
That's a major
here.
decision.
And you know what? A lot of soldiers are doing that multiple tours, and that's why their PTSD is a greater number now than it's ever been in the former wars, because of multiple tours that they're having.
Well, you know, what's to bring them, or what's to give them an opportunity to find some type of success here in the United States when they get out if there's no employment.
Exactly.
I'd rather go back.
Exactly.
Go back.
You know.
Well, what they can do is get involved. Is get involved in the social programs. Just out at the Peterson One Academy, I take guys fishing, take them to ball games, take them bowling, work with them how to be a man. When I first joined the church, I used to be an escort.
Escort what, Mr. Gray?
An
escort for
a military escort.
Is that
Oh,
right?
I used
okay.
to be military.
You know what I was thinking.
That's
That's why we had to ask you 2 or 3 times.
Okay, a military escort.
Okay.
Okay. I was in Walk to Read. The colonel came in and said, "Can you walk?" Yes. Okay, you're going down to Fort Bragg for being an escort, because I was still taking, still getting operations and everything.
Okay.
So I would take girls out, colonel's daughter, the general's daughter, and we went through the training on how to treat a lady, how to hold her hand, how to do things like that. So out at Peterson, I talked to the young guys how to hold a lady's hand, how to bow to them and everything. And that's what I do with Peterson.
That's fantastic.
We do the same thing with Man College, and we have 28 boys that we're working with from the city. And they're not members of the church, but we recruit them from the streets. 28 young men, we're teaching them how to dress, how to prepare for an interview, how to, you know, just be gentlemen and not respond in an aggressive manner.
And a lot of the young men that you're dealing with come from referrals within the community.
That's correct.
Yes, the referral.
Now that's a good deal. So that's the church, your church, and the community coming together to address this issue.
That's right. And the discipline, the military side helps me teach them the discipline that they need to make better decisions and exposure.
You know what? You need a part 3 to this, okay? But we have truly enjoyed you being with us. You got to come back again, because there's so much information that our viewers need. I want to thank you, Pastor Philip Willis and Mr. Roscoe Gray. And let me say, the reason why in our previous show I referred to him as elder, and he's our first elder of the City Temple Seventh-day Adventist Church, and he's served in so many capacities. But the role of the elder is right underneath the pastor, to be there to support, to strengthen, and to help guide. And he truly has been that, and our spiritual leader under our pastor. Well, Arthur, I'm glad that you're home and that you're safe, Pastor Willis and Mr. Roscoe Gray.
I'm still suffering from PTSD when I'm at home.
Well, he does, seriously. Well, seriously, he does. And I mean, seriously. And I've noticed some things, but it's gotten better over the years, so we thank God.
It's a support system, though.
It is a support system. It
the
really
support
is.
system, if it's there, then that can make things a whole lot easier.
And that's
Nothing
what
like
our
a good
families
wife.
need. And
Nothing like
could you say that again?
Nothing like a good wife.
I have a good wife.
I'm going to close with that. Dr. Kim Logan-Nowlin.
And I'm Arthur Nolan.
And thank you for joining us on another program of Making It Work.